Now, first, though, what do others who love free markets and free people think about what we heard? We're joined by Mark Meckler, who founded the biggest Tea Party group. Now he runs a group called Citizens for Self-Governance. Hadley Heath from the Independent Women's Forum, and Nick Gillespie from the wonderful Reason TV. So, Mark, you first. You were inspired by this speech?
I wouldn't say I was inspired. I mean,
anything in it?
Well, we know he's a good speech giver. We saw that 4 years ago. We've seen a lot in between, so we know
he
a lot
was
more.
Better than Romney.
He's
Much.
excellent at the podium. He is A+.
And they're crying in the audience. Some people love this stuff.
You know, there was actually some substance. There were things I liked. Probably the biggest thing I liked was he said that we should drill for more natural gas, and he promoted the use of natural gas. That's one of our most abundant resources. So I was glad he brought that up, and hopefully he'll follow through and really free up the energy.
This is a path where we develop a 100-year supply of natural gas. But I thought he's resisted that.
Well, generally, he's been very unfavorable towards domestic energy production. He's been promoting overseas energy production, so hopefully we see a change. I'm not hopeful, really.
Hadley, you like anything?
I liked that he mentioned the debt. He said he wants to pay down the debt. He said he's eager to work with the Bipartisan Debt Commission, so we know that he knows that it's there. He knows that there's $16 trillion in debt, which we didn't hear talked about a lot earlier in the week at the DNC. So I was happy at least to hear him acknowledge it. I'm curious what his plan would look like to reduce the debt, because so far we haven't seen him do anything in that direction.
Well, he'll tax rich people.
Right, but if you do the arithmetic, that's not enough.
Nick?
You know, I like that he called out the GOP on being vague in their plans for the next 4 years. Exactly, he could be practicing that, talking to a mirror, of course. But I like that, and I actually like the idea that he attacked Romney for his privilege when he said, oh, and like my opponent said, you know, if you need money for college, just ask your parents. And he also got a couple digs in at Paul Ryan. This is about the narcissism of petty differences. The Republicans and the Democrats are not that different, and so at least if politics can't be substantive, let it be entertaining.
Not that different because they're all from privilege.
That's right.
So,
or they're all in a place of privilege. I mean, this is a race, at least between Romney and Obama. At this point, it's millionaire versus multimillionaire. I feel a little bit unspoken for in that conversation.
What struck me is this implication of magical thinking, that they will just make this stuff happen. We can help build big factories and small business. We can help them double their exports. And if we choose this path, create 1 million new manufacturing jobs.
For me, one of the things that is striking about that is the smallness of it. Because if it is magic, well, then why not 2 million jobs? Why not triple exports? As long as we're just pulling stuff out of thin air or dark parts of our body, let's go hog wild.
And why the assumption that they're going to do it? I assume if they get out of the way, exports would be likely to increase. The only way they can help it, they're going to subsidize special industries, which will then export. They will micromanage the economy.
That's right.
They're going to pick winners and losers, and this is what both parties do. They're both talking about the things that government's going to do. Neither of them is talking about government getting out of the way, which is what both of them should be talking about.
Both parties say, we're going to pick, the Republicans said they're going to pick winners?
They say they're going to create, Mitt Romney said specifically, he's going to create 12 million jobs. Government does not create jobs. Private industry creates jobs.
There you go. I guess Romney's ahead on that one. He's creating 12 million. They're going to raise the platform. It's just more free stuff for everybody. We're going to raise the minimum wage, index it to inflation.
Well, obviously, the president would like it if the economy would improve, especially right now, if possible. But he didn't spell out for us in his speech what I wanted to hear that I didn't hear was how the next 4 years were going to be any different. He talked about he's a changed man, he's the president, but he didn't talk about what approach he would change. He mentioned that he's made mistakes, but didn't elaborate and didn't say what he would change.
But he's very Lincolnian, which is also, I mean, one of the things I found particularly distressing about this speech, because it wasn't about substance, it really was about how the president sees himself, and to liken himself to Lincoln
Right.
You know, he's like Lincoln, I'm down on my knees, I'm humbled all the time. But, you know, he's not like Lincoln, and we're not facing the Civil War. It would be nice to be reassured that the president isn't becoming totally megalomaniacal, that he is part of American history. We know, I mean, he had put himself in old presidential biographies on the White House website, likening himself to everybody, you know, from George Washington to James
Could have been
Buchanan
his staff
and Franklin
that did that.
Yeah, either way. I mean, you know, you take the credit, you take the blame, I think. But I found in this speech there were many moments that were kind of distressing from a kind of psychological perspective.
But I think it's a speech that Americans will buy, not this audience. One theme I heard from the Democrats is that in America, the privileged profit at the expense of everyone else.
People feel like the system is rigged against them. And here's the painful part. They're right.
We believe that we're all in this together is a far better philosophy than you're on your own.
And I think that sells this idea we're in this together. We libertarians say mostly you're on your own. Private charities will help you if you need help. People say to me that's cruel.
The reality is in America, we have a culture of being in it together if we choose to be in it together. And mostly Americans do. We're the most charitable culture literally in the world. But we don't like government. We give more money than anybody else.
There used to be thousands of mutual aid societies before government created all this government charity.
We just don't want government forcing us, telling us how to be in it together, essentially taking our money and giving it to other people.
Well, the politicians don't use the word force. They just say we're all in it together, and that appeals to people.
But, you know, it's also, and the Republicans do this too, it's a fundamentally false choice. It's not you're either in it all together and let's all make a decision here. John, this isn't your show anymore. We're going to decide because we're all in it together and let's get the audience in here. Or you're on your own. You got to write it, you got to produce it, you got to sell it. No, I mean, this is a fundamentally false choice, where I think the Democratic National Convention had a very strong kind of motif going through it, is that idea that the system is rigged and broken. And that appeals to people because we all are angry about something. And I think that appeals. The Republicans do that a different way. They say, oh, well, Elizabeth Warren cheated and used affirmative action to get ahead, or Barack Obama got into Columbia because of that. The system is rigged against me, you know, vice versa. And that is actually a really powerful dimension in American politics. And it's interesting to see both parties using that against one another, even though it's the same argument.
And therefore, big government should step in and fix it rather than say, hey, we voluntarily came to the studio to make this TV
Exactly.
program.
The reason that stuff sells is because regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, people do get the feeling that the little guy is getting cheated. He's getting trounced on. He doesn't have the opportunities in America today that he had in previous decades. That feeling sells, of course, but the solution is to empower the big government and the big businesses who practice cronyism together. That's the opposite of the solution. That's making the problem worse.
And this, to take it back to the minimum wage, you know, if you wanted to ruin poor people, the best thing you could do is raise the minimum wage, because all it does is price
But
people.
he offers them a job.
That's right. It prices people out of the market without the skills. And it goes to middle-class people. More middle-class people get minimum wage jobs than upper-class people than low-wage people. It's, you know, it's horrible.
But it sells. It sounds like helping the poor. And another thing that sells, because they used it 18 times and got big applause, Osama bin Laden's dead, GM is alive. People... The audience snickers, but I think America thinks the American auto industry was saved, jobs were saved. We have cars. We wouldn't have cars otherwise.
Well, we wouldn't have American cars. Yeah, you know, and I was thinking as he was saying that also that, you know, the Chevy Aveo is dead. You know, Oldsmobile is dead. Saturn is dead. Whole parts of General Motors are dead, and the rest of the carcass will be in bankruptcy again. I mean, it shows, I think, what Mark was talking about. You know, Obama is a pretty good rhetorician. He's a good speech giver. But what an idiotic statement when you think about it for a while. Osama bin Laden is dead. You know, hallelujah. I hope he's, you know, having a nice conversation.
That part's
in hell.
clear. Right.
He's dead. Yeah, that's not
GM is alive. Let's
GM is alive
that.
for now. It has cost billions of dollars to taxpayers, and we're still on the hook. The stock market, the stock continues to decline. There is no
we're down about where the money might have gone.
That's right.
You wanted to say something.
Yeah, and the
about
reality is, at its worst, it was just run by the government. So you've got a situation where thousands of dealers were shut down based on political decisions. Essentially, Barack Obama did what he says Bain shouldn't do. They reorganized the company. They laid people off. You know, that's what you do in a restructuring. And through all of this,
what Bain did.
They ignored, though the difference is Bain does it legally. The administration ignored the rule of law, violated bankruptcy law, screwed the bondholders, and preserved the union.
And lost money for the taxpayers at the same time.
Right. Obama did acknowledge in his speech that there are some things that government can't do. And I thought, well, this is progress. But he never said anything about what government should or shouldn't do. He just said there's some things government can't do. So the premise...
But the rest of the speech is, well, then government's going to all do all these magical...
And if you look at his record and his policy stances, it's clear that that's not really what he believes. That's not really his philosophy.
We'll come back to you coming up. To me, America's biggest problem is that we are going broke. $16 trillion in debt. That means the politicians steal from my kids to splurge now. So, what do the Democrats say they'll do about that? Anything? That's next.